human beings looked for patterns. In the caveman days, the caveman who could see like, oh, this berry of this shade with this shape of leaves is poisonous, I shouldn't eat it. That caveman got to live longer and have more offspring. We were incentivized to look for patterns everywhere. Now, that's just on a grander scale. It's not necessarily for our survival and what we're going to eat, but now we have the internet. We all have this device in the palm of our hands that gives us access to so much information. The conspiracy theory provides that.
Welcome to Speculative Sandbox, your audio playground for creative storytellers. My name is Vicky Lawn, and each episode, I and a guest will unpack a fiction trope with an eye for character development and narrative structures. Make sure to look for Speculative Sandbox on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, where you can join the conversation. Leave comments or questions, or let us know what other tropes we should cover. When the real world just doesn't cut it, let's get lost in a fictional one. Hey, did you know the moon landing was totally faked? Also, that's not really Avril Lavigne on stage. She died years ago and was replaced by a look-alike. Speaking of which, don't look now, but those chemtrails in the sky are linked to mind control. Oh, and did you hear about Wayfair's connection to human trafficking? A conspiracy theory is the belief that a covert but influential organization is manipulating events for a nefarious purpose. Uncovering the truth is the name of the game. Some theories are completely harmless and fun, while others have had damaging effects on families and relationships. Some conspiracy theories have even turned out to be true. Aspiring writer Mike Crawford joins me to talk about the allure of conspiracy theories, what makes them so compelling, and how are writers more connected to them than we might think. Hi, Mike. Thank you for joining the podcast. You are not only a close personal friend of mine, but you are also an aspiring writer, and you have been in the development phases of a story for a while. So can you kind of tell me what's on your mind and what you hope to do?
So right now I've been, as you said, I've been kind of stuck in the development phase, just kicking around ideas, experimenting with what I want to say with the story, the structure of the book, and interweaving the different narratives. Basically, what I plan to do is tell a modern story of a family, grief, loss, mixed in with some parallel narratives with different characters from Native American traditional stories. The idea of writing a book that blends Native traditions has been in my head for a long time. Growing up as a child of a Native father and a white mother, I was raised, and having been raised by my mother's family, I'd always been curious about the Native part of my heritage. What's more, as I'm sure a lot of mixed race children feel, I never felt entirely comfortable in either community. You know, in the among my friends at school who were majority white, I was the brownest kid there, and when I was ever in a minority space, I was the one who knew next to nothing about my heritage. So beginning with my love of literature, I went to University of Arizona and ASU undergrad in English. I started reading Native American stories. First mythology and then a few native authors, and I thought that would be like one of the best ways to start learning about myself. And when I started reading into these stories, different creation myths, creatures, different folk heroes, the breadth of it was really breathtaking. It brought to mind to me like a lot of what we see in Greek myth. All these different ways of explaining the structure of the world and people's place in it. And but I think the most challenging part is that given that all-encompassing breadth, it's been difficult to try to find a way to do it justice, really.
I completely relate to you in that stance where you're mixed race and you want to be able to make sure you do the right job. It sounds like a daunting project.
Yeah, and at the same time, like native cultures, they're not a monolith. Like each tribe has its own customs, tradition, histories, and so you want to make a story. You can't paint it all with a broad brush, but you still want to make a story that is relatable to more than just your little subset of people.
Absolutely. Well, I've been a huge supporter of you as you go through the process for this, and now you're starting classes, correct? Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. This is partially probably because of the pandemic. I have to thank for this because the Tohono O'odham Nation Community College, they offer various classes in cultural in Tohono O'odham cultural history and the way of life and various other aspects, language classes. Um, and now, like I said, because of the pandemic, it's now mostly online, or it can be accessed mostly online. Living in California with the college in Arizona, it actually makes it accessible now. And I think I'm going to, I'm starting the process to enroll there in the fall.
Doing your research, getting more self-awareness of your cultures, and hopefully feeling more confident about writing your book.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I wish you a lot of luck. And today we're here for something entirely different, I guess, but I'm really excited to talk to you about this. So I had reached out and said I had originally recorded a conspiracy theory episode just by myself. I had some time and decided to do it, and then realized I don't like just listening back and hearing myself talk to no one. I really like the conversation format. And so I put out a call and I said, I want to talk to someone about conspiracy theories. And you volunteered. So thank you. Uh, let's talk about it. What drew you to this topic? What makes you like talking about conspiracy theories?
So they're just good stories. Like they are some of the most interesting stories that people come up with. I think it's because they share a lot of characteristics of good books. You often start taking the mainstream view of the world, and then something happens, some secret information is revealed, and it just throws everything on its head, and you have to adjust to this new reality. It's almost something too insane to believe in.
Agreed. And I love the connection between conspiracies and storytelling, especially when conspiracy theories can be used to fuel interest in storytelling and stories and franchises. I think a really good example for me is when I was watching WandaVision was it last year? It was last year. Has it been last year? How long has it been since WandaVision came out?
The years blur.
I don't know anymore. So during WandaVision, though, everyone was trying to predict who Mephisto was. And that was almost just as fun, if not like encouraging more people to watch. So when you have the conspiracy element as a tool for marketing, it's a lot of fun. Is there any franchise or conspiracy that you were like 100% you cooperate with and you participate in?
I would say there's a fan theory. It goes back several years that all Pixar movies take place in the same universe. It has so much it adds so much to the movies, like both in terms of like analytical stretch, like how does this movie fit into the overall timeline, and aside you get to look for like little clues, like for example, there's a theory that the witch in Brave is actually the little girl from Monsters Inc. Um, and
Oh,
you and, there's support for it too, because in this little witch's like hut in medieval Scotland, there's like a sculpture of a car. There's a sculpture of a wood cutting of the monster that looks suspiciously like the monster from Monsters Inc. And yeah, like what if you tie it all in together, I think there is I think it's a larger message of what the Pixar movies themselves are trying to say, in addition to the individual narrative of each movie.
I like that. I didn't know about that connection with conspiracy theories and storytelling. And that's why we're here today, is we're looking at it from the storytelling format. There's a lot of similarities. There's similar plot devices, story structures, and themes. So what would you say those themes are? Let's explore those together.
They make good stories, and like there's often a mentor of sorts that exposes someone to the conspiracy theory, much like in your previous podcast. In the old days, that mentor may have been the author of a book, and now it's Real Talk 69 on your favorite message board or something. um, and it exposes the idea, kind of shakes the worldview, and then the person in the conspiracy, you become an actor in the conspiracy theory narrative. You become a truth seeker, trying to look for evidence and trying to wake the masses. It's kind of a hero's journey, really.
Interesting. So it places us all in the position of the hero.
Yeah, yeah.
I like
And
that.
a lot of times it does that without actually exposing people to any actual risk. Like you can be a keyboard warrior and just look for evidence on the internet and never have to risk your life, or even it doesn't even cost any money other than the electricity bill, of course.
Interesting. I love that idea. So my one thing I pulled out was when I looked at the plot structure, where you start off with the normal world, and then there's always some inciting incident that pulls the main character into an adventure. But at some point, usually the midpoint, it's like that's when the reality is revealed. And you'll see that in a lot of different stories where like there's a mystery up to the halfway point, then we find out for real, oh, this is what's actually happening. And then the second half of the story is dedicated to, all right, now that we have this information, how do we fulfill the goal? And I think that same idea is we're all looking for that second half realization, discovery. And another plot point that I think about a lot too is the smoking gun plot device, where if something is presented early in the story, it has to have some sort of meaningful end by the end, right? If the gun is introduced in Act 1, it's got to go off in Act 3.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the third act plot twist, where you think you have it all figured out, but dun dun dun, it's actually the butler did it. I think that we are all kind of living our own mystery stories when we participate in conspiracy theories.
Yeah, yeah. And often, you saw this a lot with a lot of the QAnon conspiracy theories, like, oh, Trump's going to win, and then he doesn't, so they have to adjust the narrative to explain that, like, oh, he actually did win, but he thought that exposing all these things might be a little too jarring for the public, so he's going to be the shadow president for the next 4 years. That was an actual thing that people were thinking.
Interesting. So explain the QAnon theory. Is it with Trump he's supposed to bring salvation to something, and the idea was that he was going to win the re-election in order to finish that goal. Is that correct?
The trouble with QAnon is that it's kind of an all-encompassing conspiracy theory. I think the core of it is that there's a cabal of ruling elites, which just so happen to be all the Democrats, who have child sacrifices and drink their blood, and are working towards depopulation and ruling the world or whatever. It means so many things to so many different people. It's really hard to narrow down. But the main message is that Trump is trying to expose it, and all these deep state actors are working against him, and so sometimes he has to work in secret.
Okay. And so when he didn't win re-election, you could have either gone one way or the other. You realize, oh, what I've been subscribing to this whole time has been incorrect. I must rethink my entire life. Or B, find a different explanation for why things are going differently.
Exactly. And that's one weird thing about conspiracy theories. Like you if you become that invested in them, if they become part of your identity, either through the social group that you're hanging around with, or or if you've isolated yourself by believing in this, and your family has shunned you, they become, you have so much invested that new information contradicting the conspiracy theory, it just becomes like you almost have to disregard it, or you have to confront like this mess that your life has become by believing it.
So this kind of, I was going to say bleeds. You said bleeds. I was trying to think of a different transition word, but I can't think of one at the moment. So this transitions into my next question, where the world of fictional plot structures is bleeding into the real world. We have QAnon as one example, but why does this happen? Why does it get to this level where people start to organize and it starts to change their perception of reality and even their relationships?
I think why it happens is actually pretty obvious, and it's why it's probably always going to happen. Human beings look for patterns. Like in the caveman days, the caveman who could see like, oh, this berry of this shade with this shape of leaves is poisonous, I shouldn't eat it. That caveman got to live longer and have more offspring. We were incentivized to look for patterns everywhere. Now that's just on a grander scale. It's not necessarily for our survival and what we're going to eat, but now we have the internet. We all have this device in the palm of our hands that gives us access to so much information. So there's this theory called Ramsey theory.
Okay.
It's basically this mathematical theory that in simplest terms, it says, given enough elements in a set or structure, some particular pattern is guaranteed to emerge. You can demonstrate this to yourself by going out and looking at the night sky on a clear night, and assuming there's not so much light pollution, you can look up at the stars, and eventually you'll see shapes, you'll see characters. That's how the constellations were made. We just look for that naturally, and with so much information at our fingertips, someone's going to find something that they think is significant. It's like this one mathematician said, well, disorder is probable in general, complete disorder is impossible. So there's always going to be some significant pattern that we'll be able to look for.
So it's a matter then of distinguishing, being able to look at a pattern and go, that is a meaningful pattern versus a random pattern.
Yeah, like that. Exactly. Like if I were to line up the text of my favorite novel, I guarantee you at some points it would cross. There would be like a cross. Like if I were to take my favorite book and line up all the text in like a square, there'd be a crossword, and somewhere with the various languages or expressions or abbreviations, I could find something where it could predict events like 5 years from now. Of course, in retrospect, but there's just so many elements to this to modern life that something is going to emerge.
I actually have a really good example that just came to mind. There's a TikTok video. I don't know the username at the point, but he opens up a book and he takes a slice of Swiss cheese and he goes, cheese of truth. And he throws it on the book and then he reads the words that show up in the holes. And somehow it will actually say profound things. And I have to wonder if he does it so many times and just keeps the footage of the ones that are funny. But there you go, right there. And I watched it. I'm like, this can't be real, but he does it so often and it looks pretty real that I'm like, all right, I'll buy it. It's it's so funny.
I think so. We can see how it happens, but another important question is like why it happens. Why are these theories so attractive to some people? And they've done psychological tests on it, tests for these elements, and it kind of breaks down to three different areas. People create conspiracy theories or subscribe to conspiracy theories because they have a desire to understand something and to feel this sense of certainty. If people live in an uncertain world or in a situation where they feel they have no power or they're not getting the full truth, um, the conspiracy theory provides that. It provides an alternative narrative to explain the world, and it's something that they're not getting elsewhere.
A theory that I think subscribes to that way of thinking, where there's some questions and there's no answers, so they come up with their own. And how another aspect of conspiracy theories, how aspects of sorry, let's try this sentence again. Another thing about conspiracy theories that makes it so easy to get involved in is because there's always some element of truth, right, to a point. And then when, as you're saying, the holes exist, that's when we try to start filling them with answers, is the dead internet theory. Mm-hmm. So this theory states that the internet as we know it actually died sometime between 2016 and 2017. However, this doesn't mean that like the internet's dead and we're all online angels. I don't know. But rather the people we see, I'm saying people with quotation marks because they're not real. All the people online that are publishing content, posting social media updates and commenting are actually all bots. The dead internet theory suggests that the internet has been almost entirely taken over by artificial intelligence. So I can see how someone might come to this assumption when you start to pull in the truths of that conspiracy, like algorithms. Bots do exist, and I've seen them deployed for PR purposes, warfare purposes. So you have a lot of truths in that, but then it's when you take it to the next level of saying, therefore, all of the internet is that, and we all aren't technically here. And it's funny because you and I are real and we're using the internet. I'm looking right at you and we know that we're there. So of course that's going to discredit it. But it's when people are so invested in the conspiracy that they look past those real truths.
Yeah, and that kind of speaks to an issue that we have in modern life, where the world is so complex that it is difficult for one person to understand it all. It's if you go down deep into how we know what we know, a lot of it is we're taking a lot of things on faith because, like, for one thing, I believe in climate change. I don't have a scientific background to understand the basis of it, but I have listened to people who have that scientific background, and I have trust in them and the scientific method. I don't know how a microwave works, but I'll use it for my lunch this afternoon. There's just so much that we can't understand about our world that we have to take it on. We have to accept so much. It's just not complex enough for someone to know everything that is going on in their lives. So when with conspiracy theories, like often they do start with some kernel of truth. There are bots. We know they exist. Many of us may have dealt with them personally, or read their interactions in a comment section on a YouTube video. But expanding that to if you expand that to the whole internet, there's no way to prove to a single person that all of these people that they're seeing on the internet aren't bots. Like because one person is not going to be able to see all these people, so it's almost not falsifiable to someone who wants to believe it.
Especially with increased technologies, where now you can probably try to explain away, like let's say, oh, let me put you on a Zoom with this person. I'll show you that they're real, and then they could easily say that's not a real person. That is artificial intelligence made to look like a human, but it's not a person.
Well, I saw this on a. It was a documentary on flat Earth. One of the main proponents of the theory, she got accused of being in the CIA, and one of the I remember one of the arguments was the last couple letters of her name were CIA, and she realized, like, well, I can tell you I'm not a part of the CIA, but there's no way that I can legitimately prove to you that I'm not a part of the CIA because, you know, what would someone who's part of the CIA say that they're not part of the CIA?
Well, and it's when speaking of the CIA, I can see why people are paranoid and worry about the reality or someone pulling the wool over their eyes, because the CIA is known for doing some really shady things that are then exposed later. But
Mhm.
during the time that they were doing it, it was they're like, no, it was happening. I'm trying to remember what it was. I was researching it yesterday when I was looking for my crazy conspiracy theory to share with you, and I was looking into it, and then I realized this is a huge thing, and probably requires a lot more time. But the CIA during a certain period of time was conducting a lot of drug and medical experiments on people. It was almost a continuation of what they were doing during the Nazi regime. And
Mhm.
people were saying all these things, and people were like, no, 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 it's just a conspiracy. And then it came out that it was all true, and it ended up becoming declassified, and it all came out. And so when you're aware that things like that are happening, then it makes you very reluctant to believe people when they try to tell you that it's not happening.
Mhm. And yeah, that's that's another reason that that conspiracy theories will never go away because people do crazy shit.
Yes. Every now and then it turns out to be true, and you're thankful that people like I guess another one would be the Free Britney movement. Years ago when that started, people made fun of them and said, you're crazy. They're like, Britney needs to be in this conservatorship. She's not capable of taking care of herself. And then over the years, the conspiracy grew, and now she got her freedom back, which I'm very happy for her.
There, outside of the desire for understanding, there are several other reasons why conspiracy theories are appealing. Um, there, it also satisfies a desire for safety or control. Um, so so for COVID, for example, it's better for the human psyche to have some sort of big villain that they can work against, some big deep state or mad scientist in the lab who concocted this. It's much more satisfying to be able to work against something than to think that you're just the victim, the helpless victim in a situation. Just like pieces in the hand of an angry god or whatever, that have no control over their environment. Um, Also, as we discussed, there's social motives, feelings of belonging. It gives you a sense of community. All the flat earthers, they have this flat Earth community that they can interact with, and and it makes them and lets them know that they have a place. And there's an in group and an out group. Sometimes those they also go off the rails because it's all it's often it often promotes this view of the in group being hyper virtuous, and all of the negative happenings are attributed to an out group. For example, in the Black Death, when that was going through Europe, the out group became Jews, and they claimed that it was Jews poisoning the wells, and it justified a lot of anti-Semitism.
There's a podcast series called Sounds Like a Cult, where they unpack the cult like behaviors of mundane things like, I don't know, skincare or essential oils and fast fashion. And when I first started listening to it, I was like, what is cultish about essential oils or skincare or whatever? And it turns out it all comes down to the social support system for it, whether it's the ability for the tendency for the members to start policing each other, um, and how it's really hard to get out because there's the shaming, there's the us versus them, and that kind of keeps you pulled in. And it's amazing how that, even though there's some cults that are incredibly damaging and like deep levels of cults like Nixium, for example, or the idea that you have socially subscribed yourself to a way of thinking where you keep falling further and further into the mindset because you will suffer public shame if you don't conform.
And so yeah, that bring like there are different levels to these issues. Like skincare, not a bad thing. But when you get in so deep that you're isolating from your family, or you're not accepting in new information that might contradict your currently held beliefs, like that's where it gets that's where you get into like the darker area, when believing in this worldview doesn't become, it isn't just like something happy and fun and a side part of your life, when it becomes more of your identity that you can't that you're loath to change.
So for this next portion of the podcast, I asked you to pick a interesting conspiracy to do a deeper dive. So you and I both have one planned, and then we'll just kind of discuss them as we go. So did you want to go first?
So the conspiracy theory that I chose is called Hollow Earth. And much as the name suggests, they're not trying to hide anything here. The Hollow Earth is the theory that the Earth is hollow, and there exists a habitable world or worlds within the Earth itself. Strains of this can be seen throughout human history.
Okay.
Yeah, the Greeks, for example, thought that the underworld was located, below the ground,
Okay.
or that the land of the dead, was down there. Christians have thought that hell is located in the center of the earth, or just under the ground. Even in some Native American traditional beliefs, that people emerged from a world below into the world that we inhabit now. In more modern things, there's the Jules Verne would probably be the most well-known, Journey to the Center of the Earth. More recently, Thomas Pynchon mentions the theory, or gives a nod to the theory, in his 2006 book Against the Day, which is where I first saw it mentioned in literature.
Are these all saying, because I can see how, if you think the afterlife is underground, that makes sense, because if you're burying people, that would be the correlation. But are they all envisioning like settlement societies or different human race?
So that's another. It really depends on who you ask. Some people think there's just a system of caves that you can use to go around the earth. Sometimes there's mole men. Sometimes there's lizard people. Sometimes there's just aliens, and all the UFOs that we see aren't from outer space. They're from in the earth, and the aliens are trying to control the actions of the people on the surface.
Why would they care what we're doing on the surface?
If it's their home, they don't want anyone to be destroying the earth, or
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
They just maybe are taking care of us like cattle, and who knows?
Interesting.
It depends on where you want to go with it. That's one of the funny things with conspiracy theories. The analytical stretch, you can pretty much take it anywhere.
So I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, if I was worried about if I lived underground, then I probably am not relying on solar energy.
It depends. There's some parts of the theory say that there's a light source underground that, like, for example, the Kong movie, King Kong, recently, when they went underground, there was light. Where's the light coming from? It could be, a light source further in the earth that, shines out.
The sun in the earth. Or is it the core? Is the core giving off light?
Could be. When you're willing to accept that there's a hollow earth, I think a sun in the center of the earth is not too much of a stretch beyond that.
I think this theory isn't going far enough. I think we can really start putting solar systems in the earth.
And it used to be a big thing. There was throughout like the 1800s, for example, there was this guy, John Sims, who was a big proponent of the theory, and he in 1818 he wrote a declaration saying he was ready to explore the hollow earth, and he got like followers, and in 1822, he appealed to the U.S. Congress to equip an expedition to prove the existence of a habitable and accessible concave in the globe. There was a petition in March of that year, and it didn't go anywhere, obviously, because they thought it was as insane as, well, yeah.
So they didn't sign off on it? They're just like,
No,
okay.
It was tabled, but it got all. Someone proposed that in the Senate.
Interesting.
And he died in 29 before they could actually do the expedition. But now I'm sure they could. I'm surprised Musk isn't funding this right now.
Absolutely. I think, why just stop at outer space? Figure out what's going on inside. Yeah. I did research at one point to see what is like the deepest known I don't know, depths cave, whatever. And I guess there is this huge, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet deep. There's like some sort of elevator that's supposed to take political people and very important people down deep, deep, deep. I don't know if it was built during the Cold War or what, but are you familiar with that one?
No.
No, there's two like that. I think one is like closer to the East Coast and one that's out here or something like that. I remember watching a movie documentary about that, and I was like, what in the world? Could you imagine? Like, I think it was like, if there's nuclear fallout, we're going to put all our important people in this hole in the ground. But now it's like, no, we're just going to send them all out into space.
Just like the end of the funny thing about the theory is that it was disproven by science about 50 years before Sims even said anything. The Royal Society in London funded a study called and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, Shishalian experiment.
Okay.
Named after the mountain that was the focus of the study. A brief description is that it measured the gravitational pull of a mountain by measuring the pull it had on a hanging pendulum, and then they estimated the mountain's volume and its average density, and with using those numbers, they could extrapolate the mean density of the Earth. Ultimately, the values that they came up with in the late 1700s weren't exactly accurate, but they were remarkably close to the values that we have today. It showed that the Earth could not possibly be a hollow shell. More modern examples include the fact that scientists have measured seismic activity and the time it takes for seismic waves to go certain distances through and around the globe, and they've determined that it can't possibly be moving through just a hollow space, that there has to be some material there. So it was disproven by science a while ago, but still you'll find it occasionally on the internet. Someone saying that Google Earth is hiding the entrance to the hollow Earth, and but because you can't see the whole world at one time, it's hard to disprove the theory to someone who is that invested in it.
Exactly. Like, we haven't dug down deep enough. Therefore, you can't tell me it's not really there. I think the person who wanted funding for this expedition was going to use that money for nefarious purposes. That's my theory. Like, I wouldn't put it past him.
You could probably buy a lot of hookers and blow in 1822 for that much money. Yeah.
Okay, I have one. Are you ready for me to talk about mine?
Yeah.
Okay. This one is very recent, as in a month ago recent. That's why I found it to be so intriguing. Okay, this is I'm calling it this. I don't know if that's what it's officially called. I'm calling it the attack on food processing plants. Here's the conspiracy. I'll walk you through the conspiracy, and then I'll walk you through the research. The conspiracy is that there are arsonists, terrorists, foreign agents attacking our food processing plants. I can see why this could kind of scare people, right? Because we're in a place of uncertainty. And if we want to identify our points of weakness here in the United States, you can talk about, our internet access, and you can talk about our food processing plants. And I imagine if you really want to destabilize our country, you attack our food source. So, what this is basically saying is there's been a slew of fires and things happening at these plants. I looked at TikTok. I wanted to see what people were saying about it. There's a lot of panic, right? There are a lot of sayings like control the food, control the people. And then, of course, there's a lot of blaming, right? Democrats are doing it. The government's doing it. The New World Order is doing it. And supposedly, the Secretary of Agriculture was found to be tied to these processing plants being attacked and supposedly arrested. Okay. I'm going to give you a list of events that are associated with this. And this doesn't even cover all of them. So in February, a fire swept through Wisconsin River meats, destroying part of the facility.
Mm-hmm.
Later in February, Shearer's Foods plant in Hermiston, Oregon caught fire after a propane boiler exploded. In March, we had multiple ones. We had a structure fire at a Walmart distribution center in Indiana. 1,000 employees were inside, but none were injured. Then there was a fire that broke out at Nestle Hot Pockets in Arkansas, which closed down the facility for a few days. And then there was a deep frying machine that destroyed a potato processing facility in Belfast. It goes on and on. Massive fire. That in 2 cases, there were plane crashes. So a plane crashed into Gem State Processing in East Idaho. And on April 22nd in Georgia, firefighters responded to a plane crash that killed 2 people at the General Mills food processing plant. Okay, so I can keep listing them off. They all sound relatively the same. So I'll ask you, what do you think is going on based off of what I've just told you?
Has the Secretary of Agriculture been arrested? It seems like they wouldn't be able to hide that.
I found the answer to that. Do you want me to tell you now, or did you want to speculate first on what you think could be causing?
I'm going to say no.
That he hasn't been arrested?
Yeah.
Okay. So correct. He has not been arrested. In fact, the news story that reported it was like The Onion, in which they are a satire news story. And of course, the conspiracy theorist grabbed onto it. When I saw this, my first thought working in government is even with OSHA, a food processing plant has got to be a really dangerous place to work.
Yeah.
And I know that we've done so many things to keep people safe, but stuff happens.
Mhm.
And especially with the quantity of processed food processing, the quantity of food processing plants, there's bound to, it's like the rule of large numbers, right?
Yeah.
So here we go. There's media reports debunking all of this stuff, of course. So not all fires or crashes caused significant damage. So if we're trying to prove that Russia is trying to take down our food processing plants, we can't really prove that because our plants haven't been targeted well enough to actually take them out. The plane crashes were both associated with student instructors, or at least one of them was. None of the fires that I've talked about supposedly have been the cause of arson. So then now you're like, all right, plant, what are you doing wrong? We've got to write you up. Clearly your operations are not safe.
Mhm.
And then there are 500,000 fire reports to local fire departments, and about 5,300 of them are in manufacturing or processing plants. So this really comes down to the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, which is frequency illusion. When you hear a term and then feel like you're now seeing it everywhere. You buy a car, it's a Honda Civic, and every single Honda Civic you're going to recognize more often because now you have one.
Yeah, your mind is primed to look for different fires in agricultural related facilities.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
What you were saying, we're
looking for that pattern.
Exactly. There you go. This isn't unknown to the conspiracy theorists, though, because what's baked into conspiracy theory is the hesitancy to believe this new information, right? Now, oh no, the media is in on it. And now they are it's suspicious. Don't you think it's suspicious that when a plane has crashed, that no one's come out? Where are the victims' families? Why haven't they said anything? Why is nothing, they start questioning those things.
If they have enough clout to burn down all these facilities, they have enough clout to fake it. It's all this like you just by trying to prove that it's false in the conspiracy theorist mind, that enforces their belief. Like they have to be like a persecuted minority trying to wake people up, and the media, the people trying to say, oh, all of this is bullshit. Well, of course you'd say that because you're part of it.
Exactly. Well, and isn't that part of the appeal too? Now you are the hero in the story. You're the one person's rallying for a cause that no one else has joined. And I imagine if everyone else jumped on board, would it still be appealing?
Like the food factory fires, that's too mainstream. Like, yeah, maybe it would lose some of its appeal.
Playing into this a little bit, do you think that we should be worried about our food sources?
I think that we should always be worried about our food sources. An appropriate amount of worry that we have a large population, and like right now, for example, with the baby food shortage, I didn't know until like last week that there are only a couple factories in the United States that make baby food. It is appropriate to be concerned with that. However, when that concern gets to a point where you're ascribing large conspiracies to attack the United States and large groups of people with seemingly, unlimited sources of money and power, that might be not the most productive areas of concern. Like, deal with factory cleanliness, deal with factory safety, enforce some regulations or pass some regulations to make these establishments more safe, more easily functioning. Maybe don't search for the the secret operative that's trying to destroy the United States. Start more ground level.
It's easier to blame the thing that you don't actually have to be responsible for. Versus like you're saying, these action items. Well, to add to the conspiracy now, you mentioned the baby food formula, which is a devastating event that's happening. I saw a TikTok video of a woman who was saying, and I'm talking about another conspiracy, or maybe this is very true. Once again, this is why conspiracies exist. With there being shortages everywhere and it's affecting the formula industry, some women have observed that they've gotten pregnant recently, even though they're on birth control. And there is the idea that whatever ingredient is needed for birth control to work is also experiencing a shortage. So now, is that true? I don't know. It's just one of the things I saw while I was scrolling through. But it's, in the world of shortages, what do all these, when you think about things that are tangible in your mind, you think about, okay, there's a paper shortage. I can't buy paper or formula, but when it comes down to the ingredient level, and then you realize how it affects the bigger products, what those ingredients go into, and and we're not sure. Now I'm kind of scared myself. I'm like, maybe I should be doing research into the birth control shortages if that is actually a thing. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Mike. Was it a good experience?
I think it was. I would recommend it to anyone.
All right. Well, then, is there any final send off that you would like to say?
So I think what we need to do here, how we need to address conspiracy theories, is just to try to put our minds in a place where we can question our own worldviews. Like there's this joke that I love about flat Earth. This flat Earth guy is in a hospital. He's dying, surrounded by all his friends. He dies, goes up to heaven, and when he gets to the pearly gates, St. Peter says, the Earth is round. We can't have everyone down there thinking it's flat. I'm going to send you back, and you're going to have to tell them that it's round. So St. Peter sends him back. He wakes up in the hospital, and all of his friends are staring at him because he just came back from the dead, and they were like, "What did you see?" And he gets them all around. He's like, "First, you have to understand that the conspiracy goes higher than you ever imagined." like we need that's someone who is unwilling to accept new information that challenges his worldview. We need to be more flexible.
Speculative Sandbox is a volunteer-run podcast that relies on the collaboration of fellow creators like you. Join the conversation and participate in fun polls and questionnaires on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Interested in being in a future episode? Our DMs are open, or you can email speculativesandbox@gmail.com.